You give us the cue, yeah?
And we're live.
Good afternoon, Ben Lesser. It's a privilege and an honor to welcome you to this JRoots Day of Global Testimony from Survivors. We've had the incredible honor to speak to a number of survivors today. You're in Los Angeles, Acharon Achaviv.
I'm in Las Vegas.
Las Vegas. Sorry, what did I say?
Los Angeles.
Sorry.
We're closer though.
Sorry. We only met 2 or 3 months ago when you came to commemorate the 75th liberation of Auschwitz as a survivor, and JRoots was involved in organizing the survivor delegation. And since then, we met also in your home in Las Vegas, and we did a more in-depth interview together. Your story is incredible. You're an incredible person. And I want to thank you, especially because I know tomorrow you have a procedure, a medical procedure, and I think the procedure is on your heart.
Yeah.
But I said to you, you have such an enormous heart, and we thank you so much for sharing that with us today on Yom Hashoah 2020, and really everything you're doing to pass on that enormous heart to future generations. Now, you were born in Krakow in 1928.
Yes, Rabbi. Sure.
Can you describe what was your family like? What was life like in Krakow in those years?
All I remember, well, Krakow, before the war, I had a beautiful life because I know I went to Cheder, I went to Yeshiva, and I went to school, and I also went to Munkach, which was my mother's side of the family, for the summer every year. But the Holocaust years wiped out all those good years. So to describe my teachers or my friends, I don't remember any of this. So I do remember everything that happened from the day the war broke out until to this day. But prior to that time, everything was just wiped out, and I can't seem to get it back. There are little flashes that come back occasionally, and I see something, a garden, but I can't recall a school, a cheder, a yeshiva, nothing. So that part is gone. But in what I do remember that I come from a very Orthodox family. My father was a Hasidic family, and I had 2 brothers. Moishi was my oldest brother. He was a Belzer Chuset. He used to go to Belzer Yeshiva. Very seldom saw him because he was always studying in the yeshiva. And my little brother, Tuli, and I had 2 sisters, Goldie, who was in Munkach during the war with her grandparents, and my sister Lola was with us at home. So I had 2 brothers, 2 sisters, and my parents. So we were a family of 7.
And how many of your family survived the war?
They didn't survive. The only one who survived the war was my sister Lola. She survived the war. She was never in a camp. She actually survived the war in Budapest as a on Aryan papers, and she spoke a beautiful Hungarian and beautiful German, so she could pass somehow. But she was also able to save her husband, even though he was in jail in Budapest. They were going to send him back to Poland because he was Jewish, but she argued the fact and She even had the nerve to go up to Eichmann's office and talk to Eichmann about her husband. Imagine they're accusing my husband of being a Jew. And Eichmann asked her that if you're not Jewish, what are you doing? If you're Polish, what are you doing in Budapest? So her answer was, well, my husband didn't want to be drafted into the Polish army to fight against Germans. So he ran away from Poland to Hungary to avoid being drafted. Well, he says, this was Eichmann smoking a cigarette there. He says, it makes sense. However, it's easy enough to find out. When he said that, she realized she made a mistake. And sure enough, they found out, they checked him out that he's Jewish, but somehow she got him out of there. That's a different story, and we don't have enough time to get in this.
Sorry, yeah.
Yeah.
Let me ask you your fascinating book, which is called "Living a Life That Matters."
Yes.
Book, from Nazi nightmare to American dream. If you don't mind, I'm going to ask you to jump straight into the Nazi nightmare.
Okay.
How did that nightmare begin in Krakow when the Nazis came knocking on your door? Can you tell us what happened that day?
Yes. About 5 days after occupation of the city of Krakow, a truck pulled up in front of the gate, and they were banging on the gate around 5 a.m. And the super came running out, and what's going on? All they wanted to know where the Jewish people live. He was quick to oblige, and he told them that here lives the Lessers on one side of the ground floor, and on the other side of the ground floor, there was another Jewish couple who had 2 daughters. They were about my age, because I remember after school we would play in the yard. And the mother gave birth to an infant little boy 2 months earlier. So they came running into our apartment and pistol whipping everybody. We were still in bed, screaming. In their hands, they had open sacks, in burlap sacks, and they were yelling, throw in all your valuables, money, gold, jewelry, whatever they can find, they threw in. And they were beating up my father to open the safe. While my father is opening the safe, we hear this tremendous screaming from that apartment next door. My sister Lola and I went through the kitchen back door, through their kitchen, and we went into their apartment. And this is what we saw. This monster was holding the infant little boy, 2 months old little boy, by its legs, and swinging it and yelling to the parents, make him shut up. Of course, the parents and the daughters were screaming, our baby, don't hurt our baby. With a smirk on his face, you can see that he was enjoying what he was doing. He smashes the baby's head into the doorpost, killing it instantly. And this is a memory that I just always stays with me. I always see that and hear that screaming of that infant and that sudden silence and what they did. It's something
You were 11. You were 11 years old. That was the beginning.
I was about 11 years old.
Right.
Not quite.
And when Krakow Jewry was moved to Podgorje, to the ghetto there, your family managed to go somewhere else. Where did they go to?
Yes, my sister Lola had a young man, a yeshiva bocher, who was a suitor after her. He was crazy in love with her. So he comes, and my sister was only about 15, maybe 16 years old. So he comes to my father, he says, Mr. Lesser, you know how I feel about Lola. They used to call her Laiku, about Laiku. Someday I'd love to marry her. but do me a favor, I'll take care of all the packing and everything. Come to the same community, a little town called Nyepolomice, where my family has moved to. And given a choice to my father whether he should go into the ghetto or to that community, obviously he agreed. And this is what happened.
And tell me about the how your father managed to sustain the family in Nyepolomice.
Nyepolomice. What happened is my father's business was wine and syrup, and he also had a chocolate factory called Pischingers. In fact, that factory is still there in Krakow. And they took it away from him. Everything was confiscated. But when we left to go to Nyepolomice, we found out that my father had 1,000 American dollars that he saved up for a rainy day. He took the money into a book and pasted it into a book. It's safer. And it went into a sack full of Sfarim. And now we're leaving to go to Nyepolomice. On the way there, we're being stopped, and the Nazi jumped on the wagon, and all he wanted was Jewish literature, books. And he saw 2 sacks full of books. He picked them up and heaved them on the side of the road. They were going to have a bonfire when all the Jewish people passed. So obviously, one book had 1,000 American dollars. So my sister Lola spoke a beautiful German. She walks up to him, she says, "My father is a writer. He wrote his autobiography. Let him keep this one book." And he looked at her, maybe he liked the way she spoke. He says, "Okay, we'll give you 5 minutes if you can find it." All of us started to climb on the mountain of book, trying to find this one safer. They all look alike. They're either brown or black, leather bound, and you keep sliding down. Anyway, they chased us away. My father is going to Nyepolomice with a family of 6 because my 7th sister, Goldie, was a Munkite. How is he going to feed him? He doesn't have a penny to his name. He can't get a job. Jewish people were not allowed to be hired. So when we came to this little straw shed roof that farmers, the apple orchard farmer lived there. He had an extra apartment that Michael rented for us. When we came there, my father was a different person. You couldn't recognize him. He doesn't have a penny to feed the family. My future brother-in-law, Michael, brought my father 100 pounds of flour, a sack full of flour, figuring he'll bake bread to feed the family because there was a baking oven in the hall. So when my father saw the flour, his face lit up. Instead of baking bread, he started to bake pretzels. Why pretzels? All you need for pretzels was flour, water, and salt. Those ingredients he had. And then he took those pretzels to the neighboring bars, taverns, and offered it for sale. And obviously it was a novelty, and he started to sell. And this is how my father started to become a little baker in that town. But it didn't last very long. Yeah.
Can you tell us what at the end? What was the Nyepolomice? What happened at the end there when you had to move on?
At the end in Nyepolomice, my sister Lola, she married Michael. And after they married, they moved into a duplex. One side of the duplex was the mayor of that community of Nyepolomice. And one day he comes home, he tells him, "Michael, Lola, save yourselves. I heard there's going to be a raid against the Jewish people in Nyepolomice." That very night, Michael hired a wagon with a driver, and we put everything in the middle of the night, what we can carry, and we left. And the only place we can go was Bochnia. Bochnia was the closest city, mid-sized city, but Bochnia had a ghetto. That meant we had to go inside a ghetto. And as it turned out, it's a good thing we did leave, because there was a raid that night and thousands of Jewish people were rounded up, taken to the forest and shot. They were all killed there. I found that out after the war. And we went to Bochnia, but Bochnia had a very bad name, because every once in a while, 2 or 3 dump trucks would come into Bochnia, and they would go from house to house, pick out the children from their beds in the middle of the night and throw them in the dump truck. You can imagine the parents were screaming for their children, children screaming for their parents. They would fill up 2 or 3 dump trucks, and then they would leave. And the parents were running behind these trucks and screaming for their children. But these cultured, civilized people had machine guns at the end of each truck. And as the parents were running behind these trucks, they would mow down the parents with these machine guns. Now that resonated throughout Europe. Everyone knew, stay away from Bochnia because of these atrocities to children. But we had no choice. Anyway, we did go
And
in
you had quite a miraculous escape from there, didn't you? Can you share that with us? How Lola saved the family?
Oh,
Queen Esther?
but you see, Rabbi Shiv, that story in itself would take a half an hour.
I know.
My sister Lola really saved the whole family. But how it happened is too long of a story. We were able to get out of there, and we were able to get into dump trucks, coal trucks, where the coal on top, between the coal and the chassis, they made room for 10 people to hide. And this truck driver would take us to the Czech border. And from Czechoslovakia, we would have to then smuggle into Hungary. Hungary was still a free country in 1943. Anyway, my sister Lola and I went through, my sister Lola and her husband went through okay. And then I and my little brother went through okay. And when my father and my mother went into this truck, a Polish farmer saw what was going on. They called the Gestapo, and they came, and everyone was pulled out and lined up and shot. All 10 people, actually, plus the driver, all 11 were killed. But somehow
And then, you managed to get to Munkac.
I and my little brother were able to get to Munkac. And of course, I met my older sister, my grandparents, and everybody was happy to meet us. And
from Munkac, how long were you in Munkac for?
I was in Munkac about 4 or 5 months. And right afterwards, what happened to the picture? Can you still hear me?
Yes, I can hear you and I can see you.
You want me to talk?
Yes.
Okay.
It's okay.
There we go.
So we're now, you've been in Munkac for 4 or 5 months.
Now in Munkac, yes, we have, one uncle invited me and my little brother to stay in his house. And I told him what happened to the Polish people. Most people in Hungary would not believe what was happening. And some of them who did believe said, well, this will never happen in Munkac because Hungary was an ally of Germany. So they felt safe. And it made sense because this was in end of 43. And in 1944, in March of 1944, the Germans just marched right in like they were invited guests. And when they came into Hungary, they knew every Jewish person. They knew their names, their profession, their education, their addresses, everything. In those days, they didn't have computers like they do now. But IBM had punch cards, and they sold to the Nazis these punch cards for disinformation. Now, IBM does not deny it, but they say they didn't know for what purpose they were going to use it.
And what happened to you, Ben, from Munkach?
From Munkach, within 1 month, in May, beginning of May, they were already shipping us out to Auschwitz. They were not telling us this. They were telling us that we're going to be relocated to Germany, bring along all your valuables that you can carry, leave everything else behind, and anyone found hiding will be shot. And this is what they told us. Germany needs workers, that able-bodied men and women will be working, children will be schooled, older people will be cared for, and people believed it. But the truth is, they put us in cattle cars, 82 cattle car, and they took us to Auschwitz.
How long were you? And you were in Birkenau or in Auschwitz?
I was in Birkenau.
How long
I was
for?
in Birkenau. I was only there 2 weeks, but I went through hell in those 2 weeks. And what my eyes have seen is unbelievable. I can't write a book enough. What I have found out, how a civilized nation can do something in the 1940s, something like that, killing, maiming, burning human beings by the thousands. Unbelievable.
You've been
of
back.
course, my sister.
Sorry.
Yeah, I'm sorry. My sister, my little brother were taken from me. They went directly to the gas chambers, and I was picked to be for labor.
And you were there in Birkenau for 2 weeks, and then
2 weeks. From there, they took us to Dernhau, which was a labor camp, and it was a rock quarry. As they dynamited the mountain and the boulders would come down, it was our job with sledgehammers to break it into manageable pieces, put it in mining carts, run it down the hill and push back up the empty carts. It was hard labor. And I figured that my uncle will never survive it. And I didn't tell you that part, but my uncle gave every member of the family a pair of shoes. He believed me that something is going on. And he put and told us that in the heels of the shoes, there are diamonds. Use it only in a life-threatening situation. So when in Auschwitz, when in the bathhouse, when they told us to get undressed and go to be clipped with by the barbers and then go to the bathhouse, they told us to get undressed and get out of our shoes. But I had these diamonds that my uncle gave me, and I wasn't going to get out of my shoes. My uncle got out of them, his son also, but I kept my shoes on, and somehow I went through the barbers, they cut my hair, I went through the bathhouse, and somehow they left me alone. No one said anything about these shoes. And now I knew that my uncle is not going to survive this kind of hard labor in a rock quarry. So I bribed the kitchen chef with the diamonds to give him a job in the kitchen, which he did. And it was then easier for the kitchen, for the uncle to work in the kitchen. And he can eat in the kitchen. They were allowed, but they couldn't take anything out. So it was a little easier.
And were you liberated there, or you went to Dachau as well? You were
Yes, from there. But what I went through in Dernhau is a story in itself. The beatings that I received, the 25 lashes. I can only tell you, my book is worthwhile reading. For the month of April, my I'm sorry, for the month of April, my ebook is free of charge. So you can get on the Zachor Foundation website, right? And you get the ebook free of charge for this month only because Yom HaShoah.
So in a way, Ben, firstly, I apologized that we've had to move so fast, but in a way, the reason for that is because one of the most remarkable things about you is really the name of the book, Living a Life That Matters, from Nazi Nightmare to American Dream. So in America, you started in New York, you ran away as far as you could from New York to LA, and thank God you had a very successful business.
Yes, it wasn't.
If I'm correct,
it wasn't easy when, I mean, after what we went through and all the beatings that I got through in Dernhau, and after the death march, 3 weeks we marched in the snow, and after 2 weeks, my cousin and I, our shoes fell apart. So we marched for another week barefooted in snow. To this day, I'm suffering. Of course, he didn't survive. But anyway, we were liberated in Dachau after I went through a death train. That's too long a story to tell. But today, I'm the only survivor out of 3,000 people who were shuttled from Buchenwald to Dachau. And we arrived in Dachau 3 days before liberation, and only 18 out of 3,000 walked out alive. Today, I'm the only survivor on that train. So, yes, when we came to America in 1947, I can never forget seeing the Statue of Liberty and seeing the New York skyline and the impression that this made on us. And when I came out of my God, when I came out of that boat, and I kissed the ground and I said to myself, Ben, this is the first day of your life. Never forget the past. But from this day on, you're going to make a new life for yourself, and you're going to succeed in this wonderful country, America. And believe
Ben,
me, how I did it.
So we haven't got time really to go into how you did it, but you did it, and you did it incredibly. Now,
thank you.
Living a life that matters. So I want to ask you today, when the whole world is in lockdown and people are stuck at home, this is a time where we can ask somebody like you, what does matter in life? What makes a meaningful life? What matters?
In my life, meaningful life is family. I lost my family, most of them in Europe. And to me, making a new family, it's a small family. I only have my 2 daughters, my dear wife and I, my 2 daughters. But their children, their grandchildren, their great-grandchildren. And this to me is worth everything. 10-year boat, like they say. We should multiply.
And when you retired from business, what did you do? What have you been doing the past few years? Tell us about this badge that I have on my lapel over here. What have you devoted your energy and your ability to?
Okay. About 20 years ago, I really had a dream. I woke up one early in the morning and I was perspiring, sweating, and I couldn't shake the dream that I had. The dream was that our dear departed one, all 6 million of them, sort of rose and they spoke to me and they shouted out to me, Zachor, remember us. We were here. Don't let us die a second death. That's when I decided I have to do something to start a foundation called Zachor, Zachor Holocaust Remembrance Foundation. And this is when I started it. And I started to give out pins, Zachor pins, like this. To date, I have given out, way over 500,000 of these pins. So every listener who listens to me, every child receives a pin. I don't necessarily believe or expect them to wear it, but even if they put it in a drawer or in a jewelry box, and someday they're going to have children of their own, and their children will find it, they'll say, Mommy or Daddy, what is this strange looking pin? There goes the answer. Oh, that means remember the Holocaust. There was a Holocaust. And this is what I'm trying to get through. The world would love to forget. And I and other survivors like me, we will not allow this to happen as long as I can do anything. And I'll tell you, I started this foundation and my lovely daughter, Gail Gerber, and my granddaughters and my great-granddaughters, my granddaughters, 2 granddaughters, they vowed to continue the Zachor Foundation into eternity.
Now, Ben, you're a doer. So I think that when you say remember, you also want people to do something, don't you? What is it that you want them to remember, but also to do? What would you like that people to do?
What do I want them to remember? I want them to remember that we are part of Klal Yisrael. I believe that Israel is a miracle that happened. And we do everything possible to memorialize those people. I want them to remember that they were here. They were part of us. My father, my mother, my sister, my brothers, they were here and their life was taken away. This is part of, I feel that the memory of Zachor has to be in order to prevent this world from doing have another Holocaust.
And if I understand correctly, the Zachor Foundation is also teaching a curriculum of values in order,
Yes.
I guess, make the world a better place so that terrible things like this don't happen again. Could you tell us a little bit?
It just so happened that today was a very important day because I was written up in all the newspapers what happened. I am one of the first survivors that started the story file. Story file is where you can have a hologram. And if you go to my website, the Zachor Holocaust Remembrance Foundation website, you're gonna punch in to the story file, they call it. You're going to see my facade sitting on a chair, and you can ask me questions, and I answer on the computer verbally. I answer all your questions about the Holocaust that I know. You can ask me, you can say, Ben, tell me your story, and I'll tell you my whole story. Will it be an hour and a half or 2 hours, but I can tell you the whole story. And I am the first one in so far in history to ever come out as a Holocaust survivor on the story file on a website, and it's free of charge. Anyone can enter it, all the school kids, they can listen to me. Just ask me to tell them my story or talk about it. Ask me about my parents and my family. Anything they ask me, I will answer, try to answer anyway.
That's incredible, and we hope that everybody, all of the young people who come on trips with us, JRoots, will also connect with the Zachor Foundation and remember your story. And let me ask you one more question, Ben. What is your message? What is your request of the younger generation? What is your blessing for them and the imperative that you would like to pass on to them?
I want to pass to them one important thing, that the Nazis and Hitler did not start with killing. It all started with hate propaganda. The hatred has to stop. Why can't we live side by side and appreciate our differences rather than hate them? It doesn't make any sense. We're all God's creation. They're white people, they're black people, they're Jewish people, and they're Christian people. They're all kind of people in this world. And we all have a certain message. But instead of hating each other because we think differently, try to appreciate our differences. Maybe you'll learn something from each other. Live side by side and respect each other. Why hate? So the hatred has to stop. And today in schools, I know here in America, they have an epidemic of bullying. Bullying is a sort of hatred, because when you bully someone, you make an enemy for life. You don't know, someday this person may come back to you and try to do some harm to you. So it's a form of hatred. So when you see somebody being bullied, speak up, say something to someone. And this is part of hatred. So whatever it is in life, I want this world to be able to live with each other, appreciate our differences rather than hate them. And this is my aim.
Thank you.
This is my aim.
And I want to thank you from the depths of my heart. And
can I say one more thing?
Absolutely, please do.
Okay. All right. In 2 or 3 weeks, maybe a month from now, we're coming out with the curriculum book that I wrote, but it takes time to get it into the website. And my daughter and my granddaughter are working very hard to get it the right way into the website, because most principals in schools, when I asked them, how come you're not teaching about the Holocaust? They would answer me all kind of answers, but most of them, they can't afford to buy books. The teachers tell me they don't have time. It's too long of a story. They don't have the time to devote so much time. So I wrote this curriculum book strictly for teachers and students so they can pick a little bit or more or the entire story of the Holocaust, but teach. The important thing is teach the Holocaust. Don't skip it because you don't have time. Teach a little, but teach. And this is coming out and it's going to be free of charge. So the principals won't have to have an excuse that they can't afford to buy the books. Anyone can enter that and learn something because it's the only curriculum book ever written by a Holocaust survivor. There are other curriculum books, but none of them written by a Holocaust survivor. And that makes a difference.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you so much. And thank you for everything that you've given to us. And I guess our blessing for you as well is that Gail Gerber, your daughter, should carry on the foundation and her children should. And I give you my word, our word, that we will remember and we will take your torch and we will make sure that future generations will know about Ben Lesser and learn from you. Le'olam va'ed, be'ezrat Hashem.
Thank you, Rabbi Shiv.
We wish you well.
Go to the story file that's already on our website. You can ask me additional questions that I didn't have time to answer.
Fantastic.
I'll answer it there. And anyone can get to it. All they have to do.
And this is the book.
Great. But anyone can get on the website to the story file and just go into zachorfoundation.org, whatever it is, and have a conversation with me.
Thank you very much. Thank you. Thank you, Ben.
And I thank you.
Thank
Be
you from
well,
JRoots.
all of you.
Shalom, shalom. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.